Welcome back to Speed World. We turn our attention now to something slightly different, the Transylvania Trophy of 1995. It's a four-wheel drive off-road event with some tremendous challenges and some difficult tasks for the competitors to try and find their way through. The event being held in the Ukraine, in the Carpathian Mountains, a very rural area. And of course, the Transylvania Trophy with a great name and a great challenge for the competitors. 66 teams from 7 different countries competing in the event, which sees 7 stages being contested with a total distance of about 160 kilometers. Start was on the 26th of May, and we saw a variety of different cars and teams competing. We spoke to one of the organisers about the event.
Zum dritten Mal veranstaltet die Firma OFV.
Well, this is the third time we've organised this rally.
80 Autos genannt.
We have around about 80 vehicles and around about 160 people here.
Die Organisation machen wir, die Firma Breitengrad. Wir werden dabei unterstützt.
We've had a lot of help from several of the off-road clubs in Germany. And there's around about 60 people involved in the organisation.
60 Teilnehmer, Service, Streckenposten, technischer Service, Küche und so weiter.
Technicians, cooks, marshals,
im Vorfeld möchte ich mich direkt bedanken bei der technischen Unterstützung von unserem Service-Team, Reifenservice von Mickey Thompson und Delta 4x4.
We have to thank our sponsor Mickey Thompson Tyres
eben diese Veranstaltung
and Delta 4x4
durchzuführen.
The off-road store as well, for all of their support for this event. So to the start of the first stage, which was a timed run up a very steep hill with plenty of trees there to perhaps hinder or perhaps to help, depending on which angle you're coming from. Groups of 6 cars setting off at the beginning of it all. This is Frank Eckhart with Stefan Dressler in their Jeep CJ7. Several Jeeps competing in this event, and that's one of the 5.7 litre versions. And that man bearing allegiance to Silverstone on his overalls is Matthias Ballhaus. Well, Mike Dubrovsky in his Suzuki CJ80, one of the first to try and set up the hill. This one of the least powerful of the off-roaders in the event, just the 1000cc engine in the CJ80 Suzuki. So he's only got about 50 horsepower, and he's having to employ the winch mounted on the front very early on, using those trees to help pull him out of trouble. Richard Mühlberg and Mario Katwala in the number 72 Push 280. Well, we would know it as a Mercedes G-Wagon. It's the same thing, but marketed as a Push in parts of Europe as well. Johan Leihartinga getting a little bit stuck, being passed by Heinz Plotz, the man here in the yellow Suzuki. And Plotz was third in this event last year, 1994, so he knows a little bit about what he's up against. And he's in an interesting machine, this one. It's a Suzuki, but it's running with a supercharged engine. And if you listen, you can hear the whine of the supercharger, giving him that little bit of extra power. Next man struggling up the hill is Johan Leihartinga, the 36-year-old from Skeffau, Tyrol, in his Push as well, being helped by co-driver Andreas Mühlberger. And the co-driver's role very much as important as the drivers in off-roading, in terms of spotting the terrain, helping out with the winching, and generally getting very involved. Well, Leihartinga 6th on this stage, a total stage time of 2 hours and 43 minutes. Quite a long and tough stage, and they weren't to get any easier throughout the course of the event. Mike Dubrovsky 9th on this stage in the Suzuki. The advantage of the Suzuki, of course, it might not have much power, but it is very light, so it might sometimes be able to cross terrain that the more powerful but heavier machines struggle with. Taking a look at the Dutch team, Chris Nicolais, and this is Simone Batten, co-driver. And they've got their Jeep CJ7, so a pretty hefty piece of equipment to try and winch up. It's the first time on the Transylvanian Rally for them, so it's a little bit of a learning experience as well. There is Chris Nicolais, and we had a word with him about this year's event and his involvement in it.
I mean, it's pretty difficult, but with a little help of my friends, things seem to work. So, but it's far tougher than expected. It's We looked at the video last year and we thought, piece of cake, but reality is more heavy.
Well, this is a bit of amateur video that was caught on this first day of competition. Now watch this gentleman, Dirk Janssen. He's about to get into trouble here. Oh, the quad, the only quad in the whole event, landing heavily on top of him and rolling down the hill. And poor old Dirk Janssen, the 22-year-old, well, might be the only quad in the event, but he certainly took a bashing there. Ironically enough, his father is actually the doctor of the event, and I think he might need some attention from his father in this case. Well, looking okay now, and the bike, in fact, fairly badly damaged as well. There he was, though, ready to start the next day. So we asked him, what about the crash then? Hasn't it put him off somewhat?
Ja, man will ja nicht aufgeben, nicht? Solange
well, it was a bit tough, but he says, I'm not going to give up as long as the quad is running. I thought it was all over. And as I hurt my back and the machine was badly damaged, but we managed to carry out some repairs and I was able to complete the first stage. I'm running for fun now, not to be competitive.
Für mich zählt nur noch die olympische Idee.
So a lucky young man, Dirk Janssen, getting ready to start stage 2. So let's start with stage 2 with Richard Mulberger and Mario Kartnaller. Winner of the first stage, so the first one to set off, and he will go on to be fastest on this second stage as well. 2 hours 7 minutes the winning time, increasing their lead to 29 minutes over the opposition. Second after the first day, Heinz Plotz in his supercharged Suzuki, but he would have problems on this second day, as we can see, early use of the winch and the cable around the tree to try and pull him out of trouble. He only was 31st on this second stage and dropped to 9th place. Frank Eckhart, the hotelier, having a day off from running the hotel, third after the first day. And this, the Ballhaus family, Matthias and Christoph from Stuttgart. Third year on the event, so they've been in every event so far this year. Or so far up to this year. This is Robert Beckett and Helmut Roche in their Jeep CJ7. It's a 6.6 litre V8 engine powering this Jeep. And he's to move up to 5th place overall after a good run on this second stage with a third fastest stage time. Mitterfellner and Kolzer in their Suzuki. Well, they would take the third fastest time on this stage and move up into 4th place overall. Just working their way through the tree roots. And they're getting into trouble once again is Heinz Plotz. And that Suzuki of Plotz is certainly struggling. Not so much problems for the number 71 machine, which goes through more safely, but there is Plotz in trouble. He's being passed by Leihartinga. And he's still struggling. He cannot get out of that particular area. Obviously found the wrong bit of route. And so going through no such problems. Leihartinga through the mud, but just look at the conditions, absolutely horrendous. And certainly some different challenges in the second part of this second stage. Plenty of encouragement for Heinrich Schwartz in the Mercedes 230 GE. And it looks as though he's made it through that part pretty straightforwardly. Horst Koch and Harald Ruth next up in their Jeep Wrangler. This has got a 6.6 litre V8 engine, 290 horsepower, plenty of grunt, but still needing that winch to pull themselves out of trouble on occasion. There is our friend Heinz Plotz in the Suzuki, but he hasn't found the right route once again. Trying to be a bit clever there and moving off to the side of the track to avoid the worst of the ruts, but in fact he ends up falling off the side of the track and into the ditch. So more troubles for him, and it's not going so well for him as it did last year. Start of day 3, the cars assembled for a Le Mans type start. The organisers deciding that it was time to get the drivers doing some exercise as well as the co-drivers and making them run to their cars. But the problem was that the road book was all wrong and the drivers tended to get lost. It took them an hour to find the correct start point, and then they did a bit of recceing to look at the hill that they were about to clamber up. So off they went then. Some very enthusiastic, leaping over the ditch ahead of the cars, and others deciding to take the slightly more relaxed approach. Well, I'm in no bother, he says. He's quite happy just to plod over, see what everyone else does, see if they manage to get over the ditch. First part of the test, getting over that ditch, not quite as easy as it might appear. The second part, then to try and clamber up this hill, but a very slippery conditions, not making that very easy either. Mike Durbowski in the Suzuki manages to get through the ditch, but somebody in trouble at the ditch. That's Gary Fransson and Peter Lundgren, the Swedish team, in their Volvo. This is an ex-army vehicle, the C303, and well, they're certainly having some trouble getting that Volvo out of the ditch. Now he's trying the bounce technique, bouncing it off the back of the ditch, and this time it works. So Gary Fransson manages to get it out. Peter Lundgren was the man busy with the shovel there, the 32-year-old engineer. And as you can see, the co-drivers have a very vital role in this form of motorsport. Well, up on the hill, they're getting into trouble. There's no trees to help them here, so you can't just go and throw the winch cable around the nearest tree, because there isn't a nearest tree. So everyone ends up helping each other. Tries not to get run over into the bargain. And it becomes a little bit of teamwork to try and get up the hill safely. Well, more problems for our friend in the yellow Suzuki. He seems to be finding all of the best holes at the moment. Heinz Plotz eventually getting the number 78 car out and, well, being towed up the hill. Plenty of assistance going on. There's Mike Drobowski. He was in 14th place at the start of the stage. And it looks as though they've got it going. And there's another Suzuki, the SJ413. That of Eric Dittmann and Jörg Schloffel. And off they go. They managed to get themselves out of trouble, but in trouble. Frank Eckhart started 5th overall on this stage, but that looks like he's going to be dropping down the order now. They can't seem to get the engine fired up. In fact, it doesn't want to seem to turn over very effectively either. And it's certainly not proving to be a terribly good day for Frank Eckhart. Well, their Mercedes G-Wagon was new at the beginning of the event, and there is the Spanish team. Juan Jose Pulido and Jose Antonio Garcia, both from Madrid, and both using a Nissan Patrol that they've borrowed from one of their mums without telling her. They said they were going on a touring holiday of Russia. Well, they've got a bit more involved than that. Broken windscreen from one of the co-drivers headbutting the windscreen earlier as well.
And I think it's good, but it's the first time we are out of Spain doing a trophy, and it's good. It's hard, but not too much. The only thing is that our car is not the best for these trophies.
Well, maybe not the best, but they seem to be enjoying themselves. And the positions at the end then of the third day. We'll take a look at the overall classification. Mühlberger and Kartnaller in the number 72 Mercedes, or Push, whatever you want to call it, still leading ahead of Beckett and Roche, with Schwartz and Berger in third place. And, well, Plotz well down in 9th position after all the problems with his Suzuki. We'll be back with more after the break.
Has chosen GT Auto Alarm, security all the way.
Whether she's Japanese or Italian, they love her. They admire her, they rev her up and push her to the limits. Yes, she's a superbike, and the Superbike World Championships are right here on Eurosport. This program is brought to you on Eurosport by Suzuki. Ride the winds of change.
The World Superbike Championships, Thursday, 8 p.m. on Eurosport.
Welcome back to Speed World, and welcome back to the Transylvania Trophy. Stage 4 is known as Trophy Day because instead of just trying to find their way across some fairly difficult terrain, they've now got to work their way across some impossible terrain, but they are allowed to help each other. They're all split into groups of 10 cars, 6 groups of 10 cars, with everybody having to help each other in that particular group, and they've got to get 9 cars to the finish of this stage, and when the 9th one crosses the line, that is the time that is given to every member of the group. So it's in everyone's interest to get all of those cars through the stage as quickly and as effectively as possible. But as you can see from the pictures, it's a very difficult and demanding stage to try and work your way through. Mechanical problems always affecting things as well, and plenty of winching involved in this part, with terrain that really is almost impassable, but it's had to be made passable. And indeed, there's times when you've got to get out the chainsaw and start chopping up the logs that are barring your way through to the next part of the stage. So a bit of work going on to try and clear the way a little bit for this group, and you can bet your bottom dollar that those logs will be going straight back where they found them to try and prevent the next group finding it quite so easy on their way up the hill. A few problems for the Swedish Volvo though.
This, our alternator, the charging system, is broken, so we have to put in another one.
So that's one vehicle that's in trouble in that group. But the next task is just as difficult, really. They've got to build a so-called Nepal Bridge made of the cables from the winches. And the task that is set before them by the organisers is to make the bridge, and then for 2 of the competitors to cross and then return using that bridge. Not an easy task, but these guys certainly up to the challenge. Well, the rain beginning to set in as well as the next part of the challenge is begun, and that is to get 2 of their vehicles across the riverbed. They only have to take 2 across, so they logically decide on the 2 lightest. So we'll see them trying to get a couple of the Suzukis across, and there you can see using the logs, and now they've got to winch it up the other side to complete the whole manoeuvre. They've still got to get another car across as well, but this is a good effort from the team. It's going very well for this leading group. The top 10 at the end of the 3rd stage are the 10 that are in this group, and it's certainly going well for them at the moment. There is our friend in his yellow Suzuki, and he just made it into that top 10, remember, so he just made it into the lead group in 9th place, and his car, being one of the lightest, is the second one that's chosen to make the crossing. So success from the lead group, but that isn't the end of the challenge. There's still plenty of time to go, plenty of distance to be covered. Well, one of the most important aspects, of course, of any off-roading is the tyre. And most of the tyres used on the event are the Mickey Thompson off-road tyres. But a lot of work needing to be done at each service halt at the end of each day to replenish the source, to make sure there's some decent tyres on the rims for the following day's antics, and to try and provide the traction that is required from these big, heavy four-wheel drive vehicles. Well, Mickey Thompson Tyres providing the prize money for much of the event as well. There's prize money for the first 10 finishers, so it's not just purely for fun that the competitors are involved, but certainly plenty of hard work going on into the evenings, refettling and getting the cars back in shape for the following day's tasks. A lot of technical support. The tyre vans, there's also a separate technical support from the organisers with welding equipment, machining equipment, everything really that's required for the Transylvania Rally to continue on its course. On to the stage 5 now then, and part of this stage is to follow a rather narrow, rather rocky riverbed. Richard Mühlberger, still the leader of the event there in the number 72 machine, and being guided through. Judicious use of the throttle at just the right moment, and things going well for him. This is Heinrich Schwartz, third on the stage, and in third place overall now, in fact, in the number 95 machine. This is Robert Beckett in second place overall. A man with a good background in four-wheel driving, twice a German four-wheel drive champion, using the Jeep, trying to thread his way through this riverbed. Beckett, 42-year-old. So, man with plenty of experience at trying to find the best route, and it certainly seems to be going well for him at the moment. Well, some pretty big wheels for Horst Koch and Harald Roots in their Jeep Wrangler, and those big tyres are certainly pretty effective over this very rocky riverbed. But the additional height, not only of the wheels and tyres, but of the huge ground clearance from the Jeep, does sometimes cause other problems. The overhanging bow causing a little consternation. But Harald Root moves it out of the way, and they're managing to continue. Well, this is the Toyota, the FJ40 of Heinz Davids and Ralph Lemon. Their second year on the Transylvania Trophy. Finished 16th in 1994, but going somewhat better at the moment. They would go on to finish 6th on this stage and hold on to 6th place in the overall ranking. So a successful run through that riverbed, but more serious riverbeds about to follow. On to the next stage. And this time, a serious bit of river, water at around 15 degrees Celsius. And the co-driver has to stand in that water for anything up to around 2 hours, and that's for the more competitive teams. And he's got to stand in the water, partly to help with the winching, but partly also to try and dip the water to see where the deep bits are, where the shallow bits are, and also to keep an eye on where the worst of the rocks are. If you get one of these really sharp-edged rocks just wrong, then obviously it's going to rip the tyre to shreds, and you're going to be in big trouble. So the co-driver's role, very important here, and a lot of work going on. This is Heinrich Schwartz and Christian Berger, and they indeed would go on to set the fastest time on this stage. Johan Leihartinga in 4th position, but he's got a bit of a problem with that front wheel. It is not behaving itself as it should. It has a mind completely of its own, as you can see, and the reason being that a steering rod at the front of the vehicle has broken, and that is making the challenge even greater than normal. There you can just see underneath, hanging below, steering rod. Oh dear, and there's our friend once again. He's in trouble. He's up to his windowsill just about in water, and it doesn't look to me as though they used that stick very effectively to check for the correct depth. Walter Friedrich and Alfred Janssen in their push going through and getting past, and that supercharged engine does not want to fire up at the moment. There's something slightly different. It's another push, but it's the Pinzgauer 6x6 machine. Klaus Saria and his girlfriend Manuela Frivers are the competitors in that rather strange looking machine. In fact, they would go second on this stage, so a good performance from them today. Münberger and Schwartz, first and second in the overall ranking, not on the actual stage time of the day, but nonetheless going very well. Matthias Bellhaus, 8th on this stage in his Jeep, and in 7th position overall. We're coming through to the end of the stage, and the overall leaders now looking very, very comfortable with that lead indeed. Mühlberger with a lead now of around about an hour and 45 minutes. More problems for Horst Koch and Harold Root, and for Heinz Davids and Ralph Lehmann in the Toyota as well. And there's Leihartinga being helped out, but that steering still causing major problems, not really very surprisingly. Through to the finish then for Davids, 5th on the stage. Number 64, Horst Koch, is 6th. And as for poor old Leihartinga with his broken steering, well, he still manages to make it through to the end with a little bit of help. Can't even get around the corner to the finish, but eventually he makes it. And there, you can just take a look down. There's the ball joint, which should be connected to the steering arm, but it's got nothing connected to it at all because it's broken off. Nevertheless, he still managed to finish 7th on the stage and still holds on to 3rd place overall, believe it or not. Walter Friedrich in 17th place.
Ja, es war ausgezeichnet. Das Gelände war sehr interessant und
well, it was great, interesting, a very difficult area. We started 21st, and at the moment we've moved up to 6th, so we hope we can keep it up. And there's Klaus Silja and Manuela Freeworth after that excellent 2nd fastest time on this stage, but that still keeps them in 19th position overall. And the Ballhaus family coming through in 7th place. Well, a bit of a laugh for our friends in the yellow Suzuki. They made it through to the end at last, but with a bit of manpower getting behind the car. He says, well, we just got submerged in the river. We had water in the engine, water in the petrol tank. Thankfully, they towed us in, and we hope we can dry it out for the night stage coming up tonight. So not a good day for Plotz, but some work going on to try and improve things. Well, on to the final stage, the night stage, and the fireworks starting things off for this final long section. And still the same leaders. Mühlberger and Kartnaller have really enjoyed a very comfortable run so far throughout the whole course of the event, to be honest, and nobody has ever really come terribly close to putting them under pressure. Number 95, Heinrich Schwarz and Christian Berger, 2nd overall in their Mercedes. And Leihartinga now with the steering working slightly better than before, also going well. Well, the night stage not being completed until around 3 o'clock in the morning, and at last the crews can begin to relax a little bit. And so then to the final results of the event, and it was indeed a fairly easy victory in the end for Mühlberger and Kartnaller, ahead of Heinrich Schwarz and Christian Berger in 2nd place, with Koch and Ruth in 3rd position. So the Transylvania Trophy over for another year, the challenge of off-roading completed. But they'll be back again next year, no doubt, for more of the same.